2025. Well, I guess the thing that most people want to talk about is the fight between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. This is actually a very interesting fight because it really is a fight between two giant Western factions, one that still wants to start World War III and one that wants to put the people who want to start World War III in jail. Let's take a look at this video of Trump speaking about Ukraine.
There's some additional fighting that's going to go on. You know, he attacked, and they attacked pretty harshly. They went deep into Russia, and he actually told me, I mean, I made it very clear. He said, we have no choice but to attack based on that, and it's probably not going to be pretty. I don't like it. I said, don't do it. You shouldn't do it. You should stop it. But again, there's a lot of hate.
Now, clearly, here we have the short, fake, fat Trump contradicting everything that the real Donald Trump has been saying about Russia. He's basically saying, oh, we're going to start World War, this is going to lead to World War III. This is the Chabad-Lubavitch faction that still believes frantically that they have to start some sort of giant Gog-Magog war to kill 90% of humanity and enslave the rest. They're getting very desperate. So, for example, they announced a huge drone attack that destroyed Russia's nuclear forces, but the fact of the matter is, according to the Russians, it's minor damage. Regardless, I mean, it makes no difference because they have submarines and missiles and everything else, and the Russians are not stupid enough to start the war. But the really interesting thing is the fight between Elon Musk and Trump means that the current Trump administration that we're seeing on our screens is no longer supported by the U.S. Space Force, which has the tall, handsome Trump, who's with Melania as their avatar. They've left this regime, and the reason has to do with the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. Elon Musk came in to try to cut U.S. government spending, and he failed. Well, he managed to find $175 billion worth of waste, but that's not going to cut it. I mean, the United States is in debt officially to $37 trillion. In reality, if you look at things like unfunded pensions and other unfunded liabilities, it's more like $250 trillion. There's just no way they can get around this with cost cuts. So when they realized that they couldn't, save themselves through budget cutting, they also tried to get money they sent Trump over on a begathon to the Middle East, and they sent people to Iran and other places to look for gold and money or something to get it past this big payments deadline of September 30th. Which, every year they do incredible acrobatics to get past it. But this year it's looking really bad. They came back empty-handed. So suddenly the real Trump disappeared and the fake Trump sort of came up with this big, beautiful bill that would instantly increase the U.S. deficit by another $5 trillion. And if you look at the details, it also basically puts an artificial intelligence in charge of the U.S. government. I mean, this is getting really weird. And this prompted Elon Musk to put out a kill the bill type of tweet. And it led to a huge fight with the fake Trump, which led to Elon Musk even dropping the kind of Trump nuclear bomb about how the reason they don't release the Epstein files is because Trump is in them. Like I've said before, they do have videos of the fake Trump doing all this kind of stuff, but the real Trump is not involved. But nonetheless, the fact that this is now appearing not just on alternative websites, which are no longer alternative but actually mainstream, but in official government news outlets and in places like the Drudge Report, shows that this is broken out of its normal area of confinement. And this led to a kind of wait a minute, let's cool down a bit, let's back off type of thing, because they both realized that there was no escaping from this. But it does show a serious civil war. Now, I've been told from before that Elon Musk is a spokesman avatar for the National Reconnaissance Organization, and he's also supported by the P3 Freemasons. So it looks like these P3 Freemason types have broken with the Chabad Lubavitch Start World War III types, and this is what we're seeing with this Musk thing and this Trump thing. But it's going to cool down. But another point we need to look at is the whole situation with Israel, because that has definitely gone way beyond any sort of sense of reality. Take a look at this video of so-called Benjamin Netanyahu speaking to get an idea of what I'm talking about.
רק שאלה, ליברמן פרסם מידע ביטחוני סודי לצרכים פוליטיים, התייחסותך?
זה חמור מאוד, כי מה ליברמן הדליף? מה הוא הדליף ופרסם? שבצד גורמי הביטחון אנחנו הפעלנו חמולות בעזה שמתנגדות לחמאס. מה רע בזה? זה רק טוב, רק מציל חיים של חיילי צה"ל. והפרסום של זה עושה טוב רק לחמאס. אבל לליברמן לא אכפת. אתה חושב שיחקרו את זה?
אני לא חושב.
Now, if you look at the video carefully, you see the background is blurred, his head is unnaturally large. It's obviously a CG creation. So what's happening is the faction that is trying to start World War III is losing the reality battle, so they're left with basically computer graphics. I mean, they have a fake Netanyahu, and then they have they're putting out fake videos of bombings in Beirut and fake videos saying that the Russian nuclear force has been destroyed. But it's all not working. And so now what's happened is the real Trump has finally managed to get in touch with Xi Jinping of China. They finally had a talk again. And what's going on is that the Chinese are not dealing with the fake Trump. They're ignoring him for good reason, because they know that he represents a faction that has lost power, and they have set up, complex dialogue mechanism, because the fact is the United States cannot fix its trade deficit with tariffs. They cannot get out of it through normal means. Everything has to be rebooted, reset, restructured completely. There's no other way around it. I mean, and the untold story is that right now, okay, the U.S. has an average annual trade deficit of $1 trillion, and China has an average annual trade surplus of $1 trillion, which basically $1 trillion is basically the Pentagon budget. So, and the Pentagon does not produce anything, okay? They're essentially parasitical. So the reality is that China is funding the Pentagon. And I think the people at the Pentagon understand this, which is why they are now trying to reach a deal with China. And again, I believe at the end of the day, what will happen is that the United States will cease to exist, and Canada will cease to exist, and something new is going to come out of this. As I mentioned before, the avatar of King Charles came to the Canadian Parliament and basically said that Canada is terra nullius, which according to international law means anyone can claim it. So the complex negotiations are taking place behind the scenes, and we expect them to continue. But at the end of the day, Russia is going to take over Western Europe. North America and South America will form some sort of new political entity. And, this is not, I'm just describing the world as it's actually happening, not trying to editorialize, but just explaining the reality. But it's important to remember that the United States has been a rogue nation controlled by a cult that wants to kill 90% of humanity. They've been responsible for tens of millions of deaths since the end of World War II. They've been caught spreading diseases and murdering children in industrial quantities. This is all proven now. And constant warfare. And this is what is going to be put down and put an end to. And these people who were involved are fighting for their lives because they know they are mass murdering war criminals, starting with Zelensky, or should I say the people who use the actor Zelensky as their front, and going right down through the gamut. It's all going to happen. But I'm here in Canada now, and negotiations are taking place with the friendly Western and Asian factions, and we will have, at the end of the day, some kind of a jubilee, some redistribution of assets, and then a rebooting of the international system. But it's a complex thing that cannot just be decided by suddenly announcing tariffs or something like that. We're dealing with something that has literally the momentum of thousands of years behind it, and you just can't turn it around overnight. But I'm very positive that good things will happen. So I remain optimistic, even though this fight it disturbs a lot of people. But it's good in that it brings out to the mainstream what I've been saying for a long time, which is that there are two Trumps. They contradict each other. They're controlled by different factions. And it's not real. But there's going to be more of this public repeating of the same old garbage day in, day out until real progress is made. So I hate to say this, but a lot of the news these days you should probably ignore. Now, another thing I'd like to mention, just personally, I have this mark here and slightly swollen face. Some people might have noticed that. I have an abscess tooth. I'm taking antibiotics, and I'm going to have a root canal. But I'm not a member of the Black Eye Club. Okay, that's what that is, just so you know, because I know that people always ask about stuff like that. But in any case, these fights going public are a sign that the former paradigms are no longer working. It's sort of like a world of paradigm lost. And we'll see very big changes soon. I think, though, that it'll start with some kind of announcement of the replacement of the United States with a new country that will include Canada. And it will not be an easy thing to do, but it is happening, and it has been agreed to at an underground level, or should I say background level. Now, on that front, what's happening now is the P3 Freemasons and the Asian secret societies are meeting in Switzerland to set up a World Republic Bank that's supposed to be the ultimate financing for a future planning organization and other such international structures. And once that is done, there will be meetings in Canada to decide what kind of new regime will take over North America. But it will not be Canada becoming the 51st U.S. state. It's not Canada that's bankrupt. It's the United States that's bankrupt. But at the end of the day, we'll have a new republic with 60 provinces or 60 states. And I still think they're going to have to build a new capital from scratch. And I've suggested that the geographical center of North America is Manitoba, and that would be a good place, or Idaho, somewhere that doesn't have any sort of partisan history, so we can start, completely with a clean slate. And that is going to happen. It's just the way the world is. But overall, I remain optimistic as always. All right, well, that's all I have to say for myself today. Now I'd like to answer questions from readers and viewers.
Hi, Ben. We have our first question for today. With all this flip-flopping on Trump's policies in Ukraine and Israel, I assume that this is a result of the multi-Trump media show. At what point will sane heads prevail and just shut down this charade and get the real person in charge and eliminate all of this total loss of credibility for the potential for a real U.S. solution? Or is this just a fairy tale fantasy? Do you think the real Trump is really on the Epstein list, like Musk says? And do you know if the Trump on Truth Social, Trump's social media website, is the original or an avatar?
This back and forth of two different Trumps saying obviously contradictory things. So you have a Trump who voted that Russia was not the aggressor in the Ukraine conflict, and that and they voted together with North Korea and Russia against the G7. Then you have another Trump coming up and saying we're gonna, Russia's gonna have really, really bad things happen, and Vladimir Putin is crazy. It's clearly there are two factions who are fighting for power, and they each take turns controlling what we're seeing on our screens. But at the end of the day, I believe the real Trump will prevail. And what's happening, though, is that the Secret Space Force has to reach a deal with the Chinese to make this happen. And the Chinese are asking for a lot of the technology that the Secret Space Force has been keeping to itself, such as anti-gravity and supposedly mid-beds and other things available in exchange for new financing. And this is what's holding it back. But I believe when that deal is reached, we'll see an end to this short, fake Trump who's, doing nothing but provoking people and putting out incredible lies and passing a bill that would hand over control of the U.S. government to AI. I mean, it's all just obvious nonsense. The only good thing I can say about it is that it's got to the point where they can't hide it, and it's on all the media, not just what used to be called the alternative media, which is now actually the mainstream media. But to conclude, at the end of the day, I believe the real Trump will take charge. Right now, this group and the U.S. Space Force has backed off the regime in Washington, D.C. because they know it's about to implode. Okay, next question.
Hi, Ben. You mentioned that Starmer will be removed and Farage put in. Is there any news about how soon that can be put in place? I don't think this country can survive a full term remaining, example, the next 4.5 years, in the hands of these traitors. Do you know if there's a chance they can halt this nightmare leadership sooner than later? To have to wait until 2029, an awful lot can happen during that time.
I'm going to put pressure on my own contacts to remove that idiot Starmer. But the fact is that he doesn't have that much real power anymore. It's interesting to note that when the so-called King Charles made a speech at the Canadian Parliament on May 27th, he was the people who made that speech, which is basically the intelligence establishment of the Five Eyes. That's, United States, the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. They consulted Nigel Farage on what to say, and they did not consult Keir Starmer. So he has no real power. Unfortunately, we still have these criminals in control of a lot of the public media, and that's why we still see that idiot blackmailed pedophile on our screens. But I'm sure that he will not survive beyond 2025, and Starmer will be gone. Hopefully he'll go to jail too. Next question.
Hi, Ben. On June 2nd of Monday's article, you wrote, and I quote, "The P3 Freemasons who control much of the West will be meeting with the representatives of the Asian secret societies, the Russians, and the Anglo-Saxon Five Eyes in Canada this summer. They will discuss how to transition from a unipolar world controlled by Satan-worshipping fanatics to a multipolar world controlled by the people and other living creatures of this planet. Can you elaborate? Who are these other living creatures?"
That's just the dogs, the birds, the trees, the fishes, all the Earth life who are part of this. Now, as far as this meeting is concerned, the latest I have is that there are goings on in Switzerland. The P3 are meeting with Asian representatives there, and then on the surface, you now have this phone call between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump where they agreed that they're going to send members of the Trump cabinet to negotiate. So these negotiations are ongoing, but when I talk about other living creatures, I'm not invoking space aliens, okay? I'm talking about just, the little creatures and big creatures like elephants who deserve their own rights and the ability to prosper. So it's all about, increasing the amount and variety of Earth life, including human life. And that fundamental agreement has been reached, and now it's just working out the details, which is time consuming. I know that's frustrating, but this is a sort of measure twice, cut once type of situation because so many big issues are involved. Next question.
Hi, Ben. According to Lay's Real Talk podcast on Saturday, June 1st, President Xi is replaced, or at least there's a power struggle inside the CCP, and therefore PRC is unable to rely on the U.S. for tariff negotiation. What are your comments on her information?
I noticed that information, and I saw that suddenly Xi Jinping started reappearing on all the public Chinese news after her. She said that Xi Jinping may be out of power. Now, my understanding is that China is under a collective rule, and that Xi Jinping is not a top-down dictator, but more like a sort of spokesperson or a single image that they focus on. When I did ask my own contacts about if Xi Jinping wasn't losing power because a lot of the military officers who he'd put in place had been fired, what they said to me was that what was happening was that Chinese military who were under the control of the deep state were being removed, but that Xi Jinping remains in power. And all I can say apart from that is if you look at the official Xinhua news site, they're still using Xi Jinping as their front man, and I don't expect that to change. Next question.
Hi, Ben. We have our last question for today. Could you share some more light about the multiverse bit where you said there's interference from various multi-life verses? Could you share the story trail on that topic?
Well, it's kind of a weird thing, but I've met a lot of people who who seem to be completely sane, but they say stuff that just doesn't fit with the worldview that I've experienced. So, for example, a man used to come up to my public appearances in Japan and say that he spent many years working on terraforming Mars. But, as far as I know, in this world, there's no terraforming of Mars. But he did not seem crazy. Another example is the person behind the Cobra website. I met him, and he told me that he had personally ridden on these 3,000 kilometer per hour underground trains that were connecting underground bases around the world. So again, he talks about a reality in which he did that, and here he is now, and yet I don't see these tunnels or these 3,000 mile an hour trains in the current reality I'm in. And there's so many people like that who have who claim they have come from another alternative reality to be in on this timeline. That's what makes me think that somehow what's happening is lots of different alternative timelines are all like converging on some kind of event. It's weird stuff. I try to stay in the here and now, but there's so many people who have memories of a different world, and I have another one I met who said he was sent here from the Pleiades planetary system. So maybe the biggest one, of course, is the U.S. Space Force, because here apparently there's a breakaway civilization that colonized a bunch of planets, that built these giant underground bases with $21 trillion that are missing from the budget, and who have anti-gravity technology and all kinds of stuff. And they seem to be from an alternative timeline, because we don't have anti-gravity, we don't have all that kind of stuff, and yet they're starting to appear. I mean, they're setting up bases, they set up a official space force, and a really weird one came when I was riding my car and listening to the American Armed Forces radio, and they said that they were recruiting people to work on spacecraft, and that it would be work that would be quite similar to serving on a ship. And I'm thinking, well, last I knew, the U.S. military didn't have interplanetary spacecraft, manned by large crews. But this was in the here now reality. That all these different events make it seem like we're having so many different alternative realities somehow merging into one. Now, me personally, at night when I dream, I seem to spend a lot of my time in very similar but different realities. Maybe that's just my dream world, I don't know. But sometimes I come back with knowledge that I shouldn't have. So it's all a sign that something is happening at a very weird esoteric level. But the way I deal with this, and I think we all need to deal with this, is I have a theory of relativity, which, unlike Einstein's, is very easy to understand. Whatever is closest to you is the most important. So what you personally experience, so for example, that road sign that says stop, is more important to you than the U.S. and China relations, because that's your life right there and now. So the way I deal with all this weird information is to concentrate on the physical reality I'm in and whatever's closest to me, and that's how we're going to navigate through this transition. But there's definitely things are not normal. We are going through some sort of transition, and even if you just look at the news, it is clear that we as a species are headed for uncharted territory, and that we are going to experience some kind of what they call a cusp event. It would be like a Cambrian explosion, a sudden huge expansion of what we know. You can feel it in so many different levels, but my own conclusion is many very similar timelines are somehow merging, and we're going to experience some kind of extraordinary event. I'm not alone in these thoughts. This is quite common, but there's more and more evidence pointing this way. But the key is to concentrate on the here and now and whatever's closest to you, and not get too distracted by these things until they affect your own life personally. I wish I could say more, but maybe I will again. I'll think about it some more. But there's definitely something more than what we're normally experiencing happening. This is not normal what's going on. But I think it's going to be a very good thing at the end of the day, because I am by nature an optimist. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for myself this week, and I hope to have some more good news next week, and thanks for tuning in. All right, thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you again next week.
Back to Doe just for a second. Earlier, the subcommittee headed by Chairman Marcia Taylor Greene, her and her staff discovered $2.7 trillion in improper payments to Medicare, Medicaid, overseas, to people who should not have gotten it. Some in this room might have missed that press conference. Can you elaborate on what the president is thinking at this point?
Well, again, that's another example. There's a very long list of the fraud, waste, and abuse that DOGE is identifying on a daily basis. Elon Musk also talked about yesterday about Social Security payments that are going out the door for people who are no longer with us, unfortunately. I would say that is certainly fraud. There's also a lot of contracts they've identified that, just as a hypothetical example, are $1 million, but only 500,000 went out the door. So where's the rest of that cash? And so that's the thing. Those are the things that DOGE is working on every single day. And I would just remind everybody in this room, this is what President Trump campaigned on doing. He's delivering on a promise that 70.
And swear by my name like they taught my people of Israel to swear by Baal. If they do not obey, I will utterly pluck up and destroy that nation. They're all listed in this prophecy written 3,000 years ago by the prophet Asaph. Asaph was a worship leader for King David, but we're also told he was a seer, a prophet. 2 Chronicles 29, verse 30. And he, at a time when Israel was, had won, the Arab peoples had, over the diaspora, had gone into the promised land of Israel. It was called Palestine in 135 AD. It was renamed Palestine. Never was really a country. It was always loosely defined borders, depending on whoever controlled the area. But it was called Palestine, and then in 1948, it became Israel. And so he was saying, I'm going to pluck out the evil neighbors from what is now going to be called Israel, put them back in their ancient homelands. And I'm going to pluck the Jews out who were living in some of those Arab countries there, lands, and bring them back into what is now going to be called Israel. So we saw that happen in 1948. Now, what he had to do, the Ottoman Empire had controlled the Middle East from 1517 to 1917. There could be no Arab states or Israel with them having control over that area. So in World War I, they got defeated, the Ottoman Empire, the Turks. And all of a sudden we find in the 20th century, the Arabs starting to get their states back. So for instance, Egypt was 1922, got its statehood. Saudi Arabia and Iraq were 1932. Iran, formerly Persia, was called Iran in 1935. Lebanon, 1943, Jordan and Syria, 1946, and then along comes Israel, 1948. So we see that they're all listed in this prophecy written 3,000 years ago by the prophet Asaph. The Arab states got their statehood. This is a sovereign act of God. He said he would put them back into their lands. I'll continue to read these verses and show you how that plays out.
Yeah, now,
All right, thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you again next week.
Back to DOGE just for a second. Earlier, the subcommittee headed by Chairman Marcia Taylor Greene, her and her staff discovered $2.7 trillion in improper payments to Medicare, Medicaid, overseas, to people who should not have gotten it. Some in this room might have missed that press conference. Can you elaborate on what the president is thinking at this point?
Well, again, that's another example. There's a very long list of the fraud, waste, and abuse that DOGE is identifying on a daily basis. Elon Musk also talked about yesterday about Social Security payments that are going out the door for people who are no longer with us, unfortunately. I would say that is certainly fraud. There's also a lot of contracts they've identified that, just as a hypothetical example, are $1 million, but only 500,000 went out the door. So where's the rest of that cash? And so that's the thing. Those are the things that DOGE is working on every single day. And I would just remind everybody in this room, this is what President Trump campaigned on doing. He's delivering on a promise that 70